Hey guys! Today I'm going to be swatching out and testing the Sennelier Watercolor. Now this 5-color test pack is by Sennelier, of course, and Sennelier has a honey-based paint, which makes us think that the colors are going to move smoothly across the paper and be really vibrant. And this is what we're going to be testing out. So I'm going to be doing an unboxing and swatching. I will talk about the pigments, and because the pigments are so similar, I will do a comparison with the Sennelier Watercolor and the Sennelier Gouache. And for those of you who are interested in my reference photo of the Bird of Paradise flower, it is from Unsplash, and I have that linked below. Okay, so let's do the unboxing and the color comparison. Sennelier packages their watercolor beautifully. It comes in this tin. The dent is something that happened after it arrived. And there are 5 colors in the tin. Of course, we have the yellow, red, blue, plus we have a warm and a cool color for changing the primary temperatures. Now, like I said, my first impression was that Sennelier packages the same yellow, red, blues in their gouache. But this is not true. What is true is that Sennelier uses a lot of honey in both the watercolor and the gouache, but the pigments are different. And so I'm going to be comparing the colors in the watercolor and the gouache test pack, and then we will look more closely at the pigments in this watercolor kit. Okay, so let's do that paint color comparison. The Sennelier Watercolor has lemon yellow, and the Sennelier Gouache has cadmium yellow light hue. Both of these are cool yellows. Okay, for the red. The watercolor has a bright red, that's a warm color, and the gouache has a ruby red, and that is a neutral to cool color. And then there's blue. In the Sennelier Watercolor there is ultramarine deep, and that's very warm, while in the gouache there is the cool cerulean blue hue. So obviously, even though our first impression of the yellow, red, and blue being the same, we would get very different blends with these 3 pigments if we were to blend them out. Okay, so let's continue. When we are making 5 colors in a test pack, oftentimes in the gouache you'll have your yellow, red, blue, and white and black. And that's because gouache is opaque and the white and black can change the temperature very easily. When you are adding 2 more colors to the yellow, red, blue in watercolor, those 2 other colors are not white and black. They are typically a warm and a cool color. The warm color could be something like burnt sienna or transparent red iron oxide, and the cool color would be Payne's gray. And in this watercolor set there is Payne's gray, but the warm color is not burnt sienna or transparent red iron oxide. It is the rather strange Chinese orange. And I will talk about that in a bit, by pigment and its qualities. So this was just a quick overview of the Sennelier test packs. If you're wanting to know more about the gouache, then I will have that linked above in another review. But right now, let's go into swatching out these watercolors and talking about the specific pigments involved. Okay, so let's color chart our 5 colors. On the left side, I'm going to be painting colors out with full intensity, a lot of pigment and a little water. And in the upper areas, I'm going to be doing more like washes. That means a lot of water and less pigment. Now those black lines are for showing whether I will have transparent, semi-transparent, or opaque colors. But I'll explain that after I'm finished swatching out. Okay, I think I have time for 3 comments while I'm swatching. Number 1, there is a lot of orange dominance in this chart, and that's because the orange and the red have a lot of the pigment characteristics that are the same. Number 2, the Payne's Gray obviously has a lot of blue in it because, like the Ultramarine Deep, the Payne's Gray is interacting and creating very, very similar but a little bit muted shades. And number 3, the blue and that strange orange are opposite on the chart and canceling out, making rather lovely browns. Okay, so now let's talk about pigments. So Lemon Yellow is a single pigment. It is Pigment Yellow 3, that's very transparent. It is Light Fast number 2, which means it's pretty good. And it is considered a very transparent paint. And you can tell that by my paint swatch over that black line. There's very little residue left, and that means a transparent paint. The Bright Red. Now the Bright Red is one of my flags in this set. And the reason it's a flag is the pigment is NR. NR means no rating. We don't know the pigment. As for the light fastness, again, it is NR, no rating. We don't know. What we do know is that, according to the label, it is a semi-transparent paint. And my paint swatch shows that. There is a little bit of sediment on top of that black line, and so, yes, semi-transparent. I would say though, if you're wanting to use this for a professional painting, you might want to steer clear of this because we don't know the pigment and we have no idea about how light fast and durable it will be over time. Ultramarine Deep. Now this is like the perfect paint. It is a single pigment, Pigment Blue 29. It is Light Fast number 1, the highest rating, and it is transparent and it mixes out beautifully. Chinese Orange. Now Chinese Orange is my second flag in this set, and the reason it's a flag is it is 3 pigments. It's Pigment Yellow 150, that's very transparent, Pigment Red 209, also transparent, and Pigment Brown 23, which is very dark as it's Van Dyke Brown. Now, according to the ratings, it says on the label that this is a transparent, and I think it's pretty good. It might be semi-transparent because I had a little bit of residue over that black line. But anyway, it's a very clear, clean color, and it is considered Light Fast number 1. Now, I am a little bit puzzled by this color because why would you have a 3 pigment paint with a strange name when you can use the traditional Burnt Sienna, which Sennelier makes? Sennelier's Burnt Sienna is single pigment, Light Fast number 1, and it is a transparent paint. So it seems like this would be a win-win to put this one in the palette. But that said, I think that the Chinese Orange blends out really beautifully, especially considering that it's a 3 pigment paint. Payne's Gray. Now Payne's Gray is another 3 pigment paint. It has Pigment Violet 19, transparent, Pigment Blue 15:1, transparent, and Pigment Black 7, which is semi-transparent. Pigment Black 7 is carbon black. Carbon leaves sediment in the paint, and that means this paint is going to be a little affected by that, making it a semi-transparent color. Okay, so obviously we have some very vibrant colors. We understand the pigments, some of their characteristics. Now is the time to test them out. Before we start painting, I do need to do a little prep, and that is to mask over those little ladybugs. They're really fine and delicate, and it's just easier to paint over masked area rather than to paint around. Okay, so once the masking is completely dry, then we can start painting the flower. What I am doing is painting it petal by petal. and I bring in a little bit of yellow from my palette. I didn't want to wash those colors away, so I'm using just the palette colors that I created from my swatching. So I wet a petal, I add some yellow, some of the lighter colors, then I gradually add in some of the oranges and reds. Layer by layer, and I'm going to do this first layer, let it dry, do a second layer, which I'm not going to be showing you, and then I will do a final layer at the very end. Each layer has to be done really carefully, and if we touch those colors, they will bleed into each other. That's why I paint one petal, move to another area, paint another petal, and then gradually move back. For painting that background, I need to use a very large brush so I can put down a lot of pigment very quickly, otherwise I'm going to get streaks on that paper. So this is my Black Velvet Cat's Tongue. I highly recommend it. It's got a very sharp point and it allows me to get a lot of detail as well as wide swaths of color. We are now coming to an end, and I do have some final words to say about the Sennelier set. I find that the colors are absolutely beautiful, and that means that they are heavily pigmented and the pigments really complement each other. I also find that they flow beautifully across the paper, and I'm sure this has to do a lot with the honey, which really helps smooth out the paints and hydrates them really well. I do have one major qualm, and that is because the bright red has an unknown pigment and an unknown light fastness. For the professional artist who is going to be selling their original work, this could be a problem because you have to guarantee your work. If you are selling your prints, then that's not a problem because those colors blend out beautifully and they are beautiful mixes. I also know that many people have commented on that Chinese orange and they think it a little bit odd, which I also do because it has 3 pigments. However, I do think that the color is very rich, it's vibrant, and the blends are really beautiful, and so I actually do recommend it. Okay guys, I hope you learned a lot about what is in the Sennelier watercolor set. If you're wanting to learn more about the Sennelier Gouache set, it's linked right here. And guys, if you would like to make a comment below, I would love to hear what your experiences are or what your impression is of this set. And if not, I'll see you again next week.